Hi everybody, welcome to my story. And I want to read a book for the part three of the greatest, Muhammad Ali. We have been finished the page 64 and 65. Now let's go to page 66 of the part three of this book. I follows a cell. Within weeks of Muhammad Ali's conviction and the removal of his championship sets, each state revoked his boxing license. Some of sports wheels or athletes, politicians, and interests and trainers joined in condemning Ali. He was called a coward, a traitor, and racist. A coward, a traitor, and a racist. His law applied the case, but if he lost the appeal, Ali would have to serve the 5 years in jail. His character was certainly considered not good enough for professional boxing, but fighters who have been convicted of armed robbery who were considered a good enough character to enter the ring. Fighters who have been convicted of murder made a living fighting. Besides his sentence on the trial, Ali's achievement to the national Ismail continued to be popularity to many middle-class athletes, African-Americans. Those who had expression of looking for Cassius Clay, now trying to create a distance between themselves and Muhammad Ali. Many African Americans also did not want to risk England and President Lyndon B. Johnson by opposing to the war to Vietnam. In Vietnam, others saw the war was drowning resources that could be used for the war of poverty, a much more pressing issue to the black community than the conflict in Southeast Asia. Ali began to literature within the national national and at concerts throughout the nation. He spoke about social issues, the war in Vietnam, and on the hate that he was accusing of spreading. I don't hate anybody, and I ain't lost at nobody. He started. We Muslims don't hate. We Muslims don't hate the white man. It's like we don't hate a tiger. We don't hate a tiger. But we know that a tiger's nature is not compatible with people's nature since tigers love to eat people. Ali, by his selection of friends over the course of his professional life, did prove that he didn't hate white people. But he also showed an attitude that was targetable on many national members. A willingness to formally withdraw from the quest to a tailgate. In the late 60s, blacks in the lowest economy classes, which made up the overwhelming majority of national Ismail members, have very little meaningful contact with whites. To most black Muslims, separation was merely speaking the truth about what was happening and lacked political meaning. If a black man worked for a white man and had no social contact with him, was never invited into his home or to his church, then why should he not formalize the arrangements by calling it separation? If a black man's life was not considered available to whites, then why should he seek to entail it? In 1967, white resulting in 82 deaths, thousands are injured, and 18,000 blacks arrested throughout the United States. There was a constant war going on while the inner cities were crumbling It was a phenomenal scene to the African American author James Ballard, who wrote, "Everything was falling down and going to pieces, and no one cared." And it spells out to me with brutal clarity and in a very plausible way that I was a worthless human being. The Carolina Commission, established in August of 1967, she investigated to the whites across the country, concluding in a report dated March 2nd, 1968, that America was headed for two separate nations, one white and the other black. The FBI started tracking Ali's movements and listening to his phone calls. His speeches were recorded and his accessories noted. But while Ali was being attacked in the press for spreading hate and being against the war, the country was seeing an outpouring of rage against blacks. On April the 4th, 1968, on the balcony of the Lorna Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was essentially king in the version of an intern and a man who played for their appearances. Of all people regardless of skin color, he advocated nonviolence, was brutally gunned down. The nation of Israel, we had so often disagreed with King's strategies. Now pointing to his moral was proof of the mayhem that was being loosed on the black community. On June 5th, 1968, only 3 months after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., came through the assassination in Los Angeles of Robert Kennedy. We had often championing black causes. All the while, many lone white Americans were fleeing to Canada to escape the drought. Others went to jail rather than fight in a war that was increasingly being questioned. The growing status coming from the military showed large numbers of men who being killed and wounded in a similar endless escape. The United States had been involved, first as an advisor and then as combatants in Vietnam since 1954, and the body count was piling up. In December 1968, Ali was arrested for driving without a valid license in Dale County, Florida. He was jailed for nearly a week in what happened to be a poorly vetted exercise. With the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., more blacks than ever lost faith in the willingness of the United States to grant them the rights of their full citizenship. At the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico, 2 black sprinters raised their fists in a Black Power salute, one of the medals in stand during the Star Spangled Battle. If America wanted business as usual, it wasn't going to get it. Ali's appearances at college campus was increasingly popular. What he was saying made more and more sense to his long indictments. America needs to be out very now. America needs to deal with race. America needs to get on to a moral path. Could Ali lead Black America? He lacked the education as a publication to assure a nation war, but he was a close thinker, and many of his views will one day be accepted. The truth of the matter was that with the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the voice of nonviolence and moderation black leadership was in a crisis. Compared with the Black Panthers, the 5%ers, a black radar group, and the emergency symbolists, Liberty Army. The nation of Israel was becoming the force of Mother Day in December of 1969. Ali appeared in a big-time buck white. A Broadway play in which he did some singing as well as acting. His reviews were generally quite good. The mood toward him was changing enough to present him before middle and upper class America. Promoters were the wizard. It was time to get him back into boxing. In fact, there was no legal basis for keep Ali out of boxing. While the World Boxing Association could strip him of his title, they could stop. They cannot stop him from fighting outside of their cases. The ban on Ali was a general agreement, in some cases in politics and sports in others. In those states with state appellate commissioners, it was necessary to have state granted a license to fight, a license that could be denied Ali on the grounds that he had been convicted of a crime. With the press, with the with the with the press license, promoters put together a fight printed Muhammad Ali, now 28, now 28 against a talented 25-year-old Irish American named Jerry Curry. Well, 2.5 years later, promoters Black had distanced themselves from Ali. They now flocked to this first fight after his exit. Co-author Scott King was there, as well as actors Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier from Atlanta, where the actresses Ralph Emily, Julia Bond, and Andrew Long. Ali, in his exit, had become a symbol of defense against an American power structure. He had taken the best shot, and he was still standing, but the fight was not over yet. His convictions continued to make its way through the court system. If all the appeals were denied, he would still have to serve the 5 year sentence handed down to him in 1967. Jerry Curran was a fellow who had life experiences more popular than Ali had. Curran knew he was fighting for his future. It wasn't a fight of white against black. He could even be a mere sensitive of Ali's comeback trial, or giving himself the possibility of millions with a win. It was frightening that Atlanta, with its effect on black popular, would be the site of Ali's comeback. Few American cities had much black politics alcohol or silver. Moreover, those of the black celebrities, even those who had shown Ali a few years early, were eager to welcome him back to public appreciation. Ali had regular exchange since. Ali Bisme in 1967, and more people found Ali's videos less bothersome. In 1967, he had spoken out against the war in Vietnam. By 1970, many Americans were wondering what we were doing in Southeast Asia. In 1967, Ali had upset many blacks by speaking for separations of the races, while Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had spoken of joy equal honor and for integration. By King's death, at the hands of white excess, made even the middle class wondering if integration was worth the struggle. Finally, Ali had conducted himself in wonderment during his still exile, representing himself as a strong black man with no interest for any other race. Black intelligence came out to root for Ali in this match against a good white father. The first one saw the old Ali on his roads, moving, jabbing, drawing combinations, and a wall. Pretty. The second round saw a different Ali. The novice injury was gone, and the legs that had danced in the first round began to shuffle. Quarterly, Quarterly, a solo boxer. He had won the heavyweight division of the Golden Gloves in 1965. Showed Ali down even more with punching body blows in the second round. Tony Perez, the referee, thought that Ali might be beaten. The Atlanta crowd teasing as the victim they had come to see was in doubt. The third round came and Ali was again flat fortunate. The quick feet and nominal legs that had kept him out of trouble, as Cassius Clay would now betray him. Corey since the season 2 became more aggressive. Then Ali hit Corey with further punches, opening up a large gash over his eye. When the fight ended, Corey's coming man walking fresh to close the cut. Doctors should be in attendance at all fights, and they should be close to ringside, waiting to be called. Ali had interest in our black doctors at the fight, but Corey had objected. As a result, there was a delay while a white doctor was located. Perez, the referee, had to make the call whether or not to let Quarterton continue the fight when he saw that the cut was still open and bleeding. "I've never seen a cut like that before," he said. "You can see at the bone." Perez stopped the fight, giving the decision to Ali on a technical knockout. Corey's in training thought it was the right decision. Corey was disappointed, but accepted the lose gratefully. Muhammad Ali was back. In the 60s and 70s, the big money, the soccer sport. In the 60s and 70s, the big money didn't come easy for the long fighter. A club fighter, one of the veterans who fought on a regular schedule, might earn a steady $200 or $300 a month, but rarely more. It wasn't until they fought the top title fighters that they could even set to make enough to look forward to their payday. The Tragaball long fighter had to have a day job to support himself and to buy the equipment he needed to fight. Gloves, tapes, trunks, and wool, protecting the gill from the ground. Sprinting gloves, towels, protected the headgear for natural masses and spinning and mouthpiece. He had to pay dues at the gym and for the time of the trainer, if he had one. If and when a fighter turns professionally, his franchises are largely dependent on his management. Somebody has to arrange the fights and make an agreement with another manager as to the fight conditions and money. Essentially, to fight for the one man, just turning a professional will be a 4 or 6 round fight against somebody with stronger experience. The pose or payment for the fight can be as little as $100 or less, while the money is rather non-existent. For ultimate and banking fight, professional fights, the punches are just as real. Even when a fighter turns professionally and is good, there is no reason to believe he will get the kind of fights that will offer him at large posts. Fighters and their managers form a team that competes for posts and titles. A good long fighter, someone with the skills to be matched with the better fighters, and therefore get more money, will simply be involved by the other fighters' management teams. The objective of pro boxing is not to win matches, but to make money. Once you're a manager at the low levels of boxing sign his fighters to a match, he might lose. Good fighters who are not well connected with a management team can be on the shelf for years, waiting for a chance that will never come. One way to get around this is for the fighter to draw attention to himself during his mortal career by winning either a Golden Gloves championship or the medal in the Olympics. Sean Sonny Lester won the Golden Gloves heavyweight crown in 1953. Otis Taylor won the championship in 1957. Jerry Quinn was a Golden Gloves champion in 1965. Muhammad Ali won both the Golden Gloves championship and the Olympic gold medal in 1960. And in 1964, the heavyweight Olympic champion was a lone foul out of Philadelphia named Joe Frazier. Even a major ultra tower doesn't guarantee financial success in the professional ranks. However, thanks to his charisma and popularity, one of Ali's major influences on the sport was the icon of fouls. He attracted crowds, televisions, he attracted crowds, television viewers, and the most importantly, advisors. A target gate or perfect tickets from ticket sales for the championship fight might be accessory at $500,000. One fall the star attracted might get as much as 50% of the gate, while the other fall might sign for 20%. The other 30% went to the owners of the financial. The other 30% went to the owners of the franchise and the fight promoters. When the fight was over and the entry gate was counting up most expenses, the money realized might be as little as $200,000. The male attractioner will then get 50% or $100,000 out of this money. He will have to pay his management team as much as half, and he had to cover all of his own expenses. If he clears his $20,000 or so, he was lucky. The far he signed for the leisure amount ended up as little as $5,000. That's much payment for spending and every evening in a win. The man trying to knock Los Angeles. One of the coolest specials of boxing to this day is the reporting of incomes. Very open contacts, often in poor contestants of the gate, while the other overdancers, the person's income. This is done to build excitement for the fight. It's clear that this is available for the promotion, trying to attract viewers, to say that the fighters are available for so many millions of dollars. A targetable figure is $9 million to the champion and $5.5 million to the challenger. This is usually a nonsense figure, but newspapers traditionally report it as if it was real. Muhammad Ali, with his fighting style, his claim, and even the compensation was swirling him around, brought a new level of interest into the sport and dramatically changed the income levels of fighting matches. He did this by a deep understanding of the middle. Before Ali, fighters did not speak. They were spoke for. Few fights fans who lived during the era of Joe Louis could ever quote to the man who have held the championship for so many years. What fans knew about Louis, they learned from reports, but Ali used the medal to promote his box and himself. It was the new medal of television and its sponsors that provided with equally every event that all fighters could hope for in the future. Ali had an equal insight into the more popular aspect of boxing. Fighters often saw themselves as very vocal in the fight business as a sport for men of their kind. Ali looked at boxing as entertainment. His interests were those of the interest in Athena, and he knew exactly what he was doing with them. He brought people around him who had entertainment run to the mill, including Drew Barbarian Brown, where he would stand toe to toe and shot his float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Slogan. He held an airline stability fashion, the black entertainer, as a handyman around the chess champ. Even Ali's relationship was the press was that of the entertainer. He avoided those reporters who keep trying to pay for insights into his relationship with no nation instrument, but reporters who appreciated Ali's entertainment values were all allowed in his camp. In Pacarella, the sports television journalist Howard Cosell embedded Ali as an athlete and embracing his attacks, and the two men become close friends. Muhammad Ali made more money than any other boxer in history. He also allowed the fighters he faced in the ring to make more money than they could have even dreaming around him. Ironically, many of them didn't realize this fact. Each fighter steps into the ring, he knows there will be a cost. For the glory of the possible win, there will be a price mercer in the unit of pay. He will have an idea. If he is honest with himself of just how much pain he will have to endure on a given night, how much blood he will lose, and just how long it will take for his body to recover from the invisible battle. Every fight hurts. Every fight damages the body. Some damage the soul. Fights are often signed in the dressing room as the fighters extend his amazement to the glare of inside. The remains of the impending battle flickers through his mind, and he visualizes himself winning. Person has important more than he is Person has important more than he is punished. He sees himself losing his style, losing those tools most comfortable to him to control the fight. Muhammad Ali could see himself moving quickly, drawing out lightning jabs, leaning back just out of reach of the desperate hooks. He saw himself frustrating his opponent and imposing his will on the fight. Even if he was convinced that could win the fight, convincing beyond the hype and the false bravado he unveiled to the press, he must still have assesses how much suffering he could bear to carry it off. When the pain comes, it can be execution. A 200-pound heavyweight at the top of his form can deliver a devastating blow. A good single blow to the face can break the neck of the indolent person. Those watching on television or at ringside can scream at a fighter who lies happiness against the votes or who has stumbled heaven into the cabins to get back into the ring and fight. But few fights fans had ever been hit with even a glancing blow from the well funnel. They don't know the courage it takes to continue when the body is screaming to give it up. Body punches bruises the muscles that helps the fighter, turns, it lifts his arms, that puts the webs out of shape, that breathes and tear the internal organs. Hours after the fight, the torn torso and bleeding showed up as a body tent in the free air. A fellow's hand darts, cuts are alive with pain as they are slamming again and again, or as a glove is scraping across the exposed nose. Forehead cuts bleeding to the eyes and give color to the violence. Follows hard. They survive by accepting the origin of fighting as a way of life. At the top ranks there are trainers and doctors as at ringside, and other doctors are examining and care for the boxer at the lower end of the spectrum. There's less medical intentions, less time to heal between fouls, less money for good treatment. Whether the medical treatment received before and after the fight is good or bad, the damage to the body is still done. Mostly the body is forgiven. It was easily healed. The major physical problems the fouls that fouls and causes are with the eyes and with the brain. Physicals had long studied the effects of fighting, and especially taking blows to the head. Some feel that boxing can be made safer. Others disagree. They feel that as long as the only purpose of fighting is to do damage to the head and body, it would be a dangerous sport. Just how destruction is fighting to be human body. Doctors debate, but fellows know. Part 3. The People's Champion. Ali versus Fraser. If there is such a thing as a stereotype follower, it was Joe Fraser, born into the Dope family in Belfort, South Carolina, on January the 12th, 1944. Joe had moved to Philadelphia and altered a boxing career by his mid-teens. The inner city streets of Philadelphia are brutal and tough, and the fellows that come from there for the era are known for their aggression, reason style. In 1964, Fraser came onto national attention by winning the Liberty Heavyweight Championship. Fraser, a combatant of 5 feet 11, was a busy fellow coming after the opponent with laces, hair bobbing and moving into the action, always trying to set out his powerful left hook. His style was simply, he inflicted his brutal punishment on any fighter he faced. If his opponent were a wall, he would knock down the wall. If his opponent were a mountain or were a mountain, he would knock down the mountain. Like all champions, he worked hard. He worked hard in training. When other fighters trained by spending 3 rounds a day, Fraser would spare 8. He also maintained a steady job, working in a slaughterhouse to support his family. Smoking Joe, as he was known, turned professional in 1965. He won 4 fights in that jail and 9 the next, scoring 4 one-round knockouts. By the end of 1967, with Muhammad Ali out of boxing, Fraser was considered to be #1 contender for the heavyweight championship. In March 1968, he defeated Buster Martins, a tail, Lumberland fighter, and was crowned heavyweight champion. What Fraser wanted from boxing was to make a living, but he also wanted to be part of the tradition that he had taken poor black men from certain farms and shitty ghettos to the big time. Fighting on a championship level meant good money, but it was also meant a kind of respect that black men with a little education couldn't get anywhere else. It meant having your picture taken with celebrities and signing autographs. It meant having reporters ask you questions about topics they wouldn't have dreaming of discussion with you if you haven't been the champion. It meant being called champ instead of boy. It's like a friend error. Jimmy DePayne, former light heavyweight contender and training all over. You get You get intelligent in the ways you fight with somebody that's skilled between than you learn who you really are deep inside. After you've been those wars, after you've been through those wars, and you still have the heart to continue in this game. You know, you're enough fundamental and fundamentally and anybody else that knows what those wars are about on you respect. When Fraser and Sister and sooner when Fraser assuming the championship in March 1968. However, a huge showdown hung over his town. The shadow was Muhammad Ali. It was Ali people were still talking about. Ali had beaten the famous Southern Leston, the reigning champion, twice. He had also beaten and humiliated the former championship, Floyd Patterson. It was still the star. The reporters were going to Ford interviews. It was still claiming the championship that had been taken from him by the World Boxing Association. After the March fight that earned him the championship, Frazier went back into the ring 2 more times in 1968. The first fight was against Miller Ramos, who was stopped in 2 rounds on June 24th. The second fight was a December 10th decision against Oscar Bonavali, and welcoming if unexpected follow from South America. Little fighting attracting much attention. To make matters worse, there was a dispute over who exactly won the championship. The New York State Athletic Commissioner claimed it was Frazier, but the competing World Boxing Association disputed the king and had their own box off. Every tension naming Jimmy Ellis from Louisville as their champion. In 1969, there were only 2 fights for Frazier, one against Dave Zagorek on April 22nd, in which Frazier scored a second round knockout, and the other against Jerry Crudup on June 23rd. There was little to gain for Frazier in the end, the fight against Zagorek, an unknown who had particularly carried no drawing power. A white contender would have attracted attention by bringing more white fans to the arenas. People who weren't fight fans needed to identify with the fighters before they walked past seats to both the bouts. Corny, a good, tough boxer, was just below the championship level in skills and sternness. He had the courage, but had a tendency to get cut badly. Boxing, without a major personality, is not a very lucrative sport. To their credit, Frazier's handler did not try to get him a lot of low-level fights. The fight game was about money, and there was no reason for Joe to risk himself if the money wasn't there. Meanwhile, a number of fighters were being targeted as possible contenders for the throne that Ali had vacated. Van Taylor ignored Frazier. Even when Frazier defeated Jimmy Ellis in February 1967 and earned the 2 championships, the New York State Athletic Commissioner, and the World Boxing Association, there was still little interest in the talent but colonists fairly definitely. But rumors had it through that Muhammad Ali was going to be allowed to fight again. There were still auspicious opposition that included such high-power names as Centennial Stone, Donald Warren, and Ronald Reagan, then governor of California. But in October 1970, a deal was worked out in Atlanta when Ali was signed to fight Jerry Crudup. A month later, Frazier fought and knocked out a good light. light heavyweight Bob Foster. In December of the same year, Ali wore down and determined Oscar de Valera. Ali and Friesel had fought and defeated the same two fellows, Quinn and Boerval. All the talk was for a match between Ali and Friesel. The match for the World Heavyweight title was set for March 8, 1971 in New York City. Come on up, work hard and I'll make you rich, Ali had said to Friesel after the 1964 Olympics. The two men knew each other. Friesel, 2 years longer, understood that Ali would be the man to beat. He had seen Ali's fights. He knew what he can do. He had also respect Ali. Even when fighters like Floyd Patterson were jumping on an entire Muslim bandwagon, Ali, on the other hand, couldn't stand the idea that prominent black men choose to be non-politicians. He banned Martin Friesel in public, saying that Joe didn't stand for the black man that he was on Uncle Tom, a black who went along with the rights to be anonymous. Ali was setting himself up as the true black champion while Friesel was, at best, a pretender who did not deserve the support of black people. Ali's taught the same ones he lose against Linston and Patterson, bothering Joe Friesel more than the other fighters. To Linston, Ali was just annoyed. Patterson's dislike for Ali who was brought on his idea of what Ali represented. But Linston and Patterson had already gained the championships and then places in history with their first winning to Ali. Linston was the monster's dog, the baddest man in the house. And while he relentless, Patterson was Mr. Nice Guy. The likable man was his solid skills. Friesel was still fighting for respect. He didn't like it when Ali called him ugly or stupid. He also didn't like the idea that Ali was violating basic concept of fighting to always show respect for the opponent. Monday night, March 8, 1971. This was the night that fans around the world were waiting for. For many African Americans, it was to be the night when the man who personified Black is Beautiful will regain the championship. For Joe Frazier, this would be the night, finally, when he would gain the award, respect at ringside. He evangelized it, covering the fight for the British press, knowing how many white Americans reporters were opening hostility to Ali. Everyone understood one thing. Ali had never faced a fighter with the skills and the determination of spoken Joe Frazier. The fight started with the two men both working comfortably in their styles. Frazier moving, barbaring, relentless aggression. Ali jabbed and moved, floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. Frazier had predicted that Ali had no chance to slug it out with him toe-to-toe and will understand that. He's going to have to do two things. Move backwards and fight, Friesel said. I only have to fight. Ali moved backwards, fighting like follies that made Frazier look like hopeless outcast. But Frazier did not fall. He kept on coming. Occasionally, Ali would tie him up and talk to him, as if he were entering this demo for Joe's talents. Still, Frazier kept coming. When Ali tried to lie against the ropes, Frazier punching his body with blows that sometimes landed against the hips and tights of the tall man. In the center of the ring, Frazier made sure that Ali had no time to rest. For the first 9 rounds, it looked like as if Ali could simply coasting through the fight. popping away at Fraser at will. Then, in the 10th and 11th rounds, Ali began to slow, as he had done in the Quality and Bolivar fights. The difference was in the fouls he was now facing. At left hook caught Ali. At left hook caught Ali and sent him rallying towards the ropes. He clenches and held on, smoothing of Fraser's outlast onslaught with ring saber. The crowd sensed that Fraser was coming on. The fight was scheduled for 15 rounds, and it looked as if it would only be a matter of time until Fraser got to Ali for the knockout. Among the press, Ali's detractors were now screaming for Fraser to destroy the greatest. The 14th round, Ali summoned up a through ferocious strength. For the brief time he thought he brought the fight back to his eye, jabbing, moving, hitting Fraser with right crosses that would have knocked down, at least game foul. At the end of the round, both fouls, close to their physical limits, went reeling back to their corners. The outcome of the fight was still in doubt. It looked like Fraser was winning, but was he? How was the early rounds score? Could Ali be ahead? Both fighters were told that they needed the final round. Fraser had come too far to back down. He had training too long and worked too hard to concede even a moment of the fight. Ali moved for the first seconds of the rounds, but the fabulous legs soon grew heavily, and he was lunging against the ropes and trying to go to tie Joe up. The speed was gone, and the last round, and all Fraser and was Fraser all free. The speed was gone, and the last round was all Fraser, capping it by a dominant left hook to Ali's jab that sent him to the cabins. Ali got up quickly. He had survived Fraser's final onslaught, but there was no doubt we had won the fight. It was Muhammad Ali's first professional defeat. The world has seen as many further about conducting by the two great fellows. They have seen Joe Fraser take everything that Muhammad Ali could dish out and still maintain his style. As hypothetically, Ali had to do two things: move backwards and fight. All Fraser had to do was fight. They had also seen Muhammad Ali take more points in mid than ever before. His speed was no longer unbeatable as it had been. Ali sitting ejected in the locker room, his jaw swollen from the impact of Fraser's blow, seemed certainly immortal. If the sports widows we had ordered Fraser to slowly Ali through that, the defeat had put an end to his popularity. The World War. Ali came out of the fight with more fans than ever. Declared that some sports widows playing their dispatches, firing the fight so only to strengthen the results of all these fans, especially along people throughout the world, to continue supporting him. Muhammad Ali, labeled by some the champion of the Black Muslim, was still the people's champion. That's all for the part 3. Part 4 is coming next time. Until then, this is Joseph Crudup. I'll see you next time as we continue to read the greatest, Muhammad Ali.